Hi, I'm Abdul Saad, clinical psychologist at Vital Mind Psychology here in Sydney, Australia. My website is vitalmind.com.au and you can also check me out on Facebook. Just search for Vital Mind Psychology. Remember, on the website you can find information relating to my approach, as well as the coaching services I offer to international clients wherever you are in the world. So today's video is the bonus video that I've promised on the covert narcissist and Schadenfreude. And what I hope to do in this video, because I'm going to split up this bonus video into two parts. In today, I'm going to look at why covert narcissists love others' misfortune. So why are they susceptible to the emotion of Schadenfreude, which I'm going to be going through. So I'm going to give a systematic explanation or outline a model on the board of why this is the case. And in next week's video, or the next video, it's going to be more of a practical perspective of, how can an individual protect themselves against being victimized by this sort of disturbed character structure that we see in a covertly narcissistic personality when we understand the Schadenfreude and the envy. So let's get started. The first thing I want to do is to define some terms. So in order to fully understand Schadenfreude, let me write that out on the board. Schadenfreude. If I look at my notes here in terms of the etymology, it's a compound of the German words Schaden, meaning harm, and Freude, meaning joy, Schadenfreude. And it's interesting because when I thought about how would I say this in my second language, which is Arabic, the Arabic word for Schadenfreude is shamata, and actually when I think about it as an Arabic speaker, it has that very strong connotation of that sense of joy at the misfortune of another person. It captures. So maybe think about, if you speak a language other than English, in your language, what is the word that captures, that quintessentially captures this phenomenon of Schadenfreude? And in my parents' mother tongue of Arabic, it's the word shamata. Because what we're dealing here with Schadenfreude is it's a complex emotion, because it's joy and it's pleasure that an individual experiences when they discover or are made aware of someone else's misfortune. Now, it's important to be aware that we can have two types of Schadenfreude. We can have situational Schadenfreude and dispositional. Excuse my horrible handwriting. Now, we all can experience Schadenfreude situationally. In fact, if you're really bored out of your brain and go onto YouTube, there's lots of videos of what's called entitled people getting owned, and typically it's someone that is demonstrating quite entitled narcissistic traits, berating a clerk, berating someone at a check-in counter at a hotel or at an airport because they missed their flights. And people give the thumbs up to this video because they can see, look, this person's being a jerk, they're entitled, and they've missed their flight. So that's situational Schadenfreude, where if we feel it's deserved and the person is being horrible, narcissistic, entitled, we all are susceptible to experiencing this sense of joy at someone else's misfortune situationally. What we're dealing with covert narcissism is what's called dispositional Schadenfreude. And what that means is that this emotion of experiencing joy and pleasure at someone else's misfortune is basically a core or integral part of the person's internal mental life and has a psychological function. It serves a psychological role in their lives. What I mean by that is the covert narcissist gains psychologically from others' misfortune. And therefore, the experience of Schadenfreude feeds into their pathology. Now, the other emotion which we need to put on the board here to understand how Schadenfreude operates is that of envy. And if you've watched my earlier videos on the emotion at the heart of narcissism, I mentioned envy as the dominant emotion, and I mentioned in that video that envy is actually a form of hatred. And envy is another complex emotion which is a combination of hatred, resentment, and hostility toward an individual who is perceived to have a prized attribute or skill or accolade or status. And what envy entails is the desire for the envious individual toward the person who possesses what they want, toward that person losing that possession, toward them being stripped of it. So it's a very primitive and powerful and hostile emotion. So what I hope to explain now is how envy and Schadenfreude are linked, and what psychological role does Schadenfreude play in the life of the covert narcissist. So to do that, I need a bit more space. So let's begin our model by sort of systematically breaking down what's going on here. So we begin with covert narcissism in this model, because this is the variant of narcissism that has been identified in the clinical literature and from clinical experience as being most prone to the experience of both envy and Schadenfreude. And again, Schadenfreude simply means joy or pleasure that is taken at the misfortune of others. So we begin with covert narcissism, which, if you've watched my last two videos, is a very complex mix of both inferiority and grandiosity, which is hidden. And the personality structure of a covert narcissist leads them to make what's called upward social comparisons. So, in other words, the covert narcissist is painfully, because of their painful upward social comparisons, because of the covert narcissist's painful self-awareness, they habitually engage in these upward social comparisons where they compare themselves unfavorably to others and are acutely aware of others that are higher on the dominance hierarchy than them, that are more educated than them, that are more brilliant than them, that are more famous or popular than them. And these upward social comparisons for a covert narcissistic individual trigger incredibly painful feelings of inferiority, which leads this individual to experience the very painful and very hostile emotion of envy. And we've defined envy as this hostility, as this hatred that is directed towards someone that is perceived to have a skill or attribute that is desirable, and envy is also linked with that need for that person to be destroyed, or for them to be dispossessed of that attribute or of that accolade that is envied. So covert narcissism leads to upward social comparisons. Upward social comparisons produce painful feelings of inferiority, which lead to envy. And envy leads to Schadenfreude. Okay, so envy is the gateway to Schadenfreude, or the experience of joy at the misfortune of others. And this is the heart of where we get into why. Because Schadenfreude serves a psychological purpose for the narcissistic individual. So first of all, the envy is the predisposition, it's the gateway. And when they experience Schadenfreude, when they become aware of the misfortune of another person, so that an individual losing money, an individual having marriage troubles, an individual going through a health crisis, psychologically this has produces two powerful psychological gains for the covert narcissist. The first one is it provides relief from envy. at least temporarily, right? Because the relief from envy also comes from the fact that they can now make what's called a downward social comparison. So let me explain these two things. By becoming aware of the misfortune of another person in their downfall or something horrible going on in their life, there is a circumventing of the process of envy. So, this sort of perception of envy is blocked temporarily because they're aware of someone else's misfortune and they can experience the joy and the glee from that person's misfortune, which relieves them from their envy temporarily. And secondly, it bolsters their self-esteem temporarily, because when they are aware of someone that is downtrodden, that has experienced some sort of catastrophe, disaster, or misfortune, they can then make a downward social comparison. They can start to look down at that person as being in a worse position. And that temporarily bolsters their self-esteem and gives them an opportunity to make a downward social comparison, which is more characteristic of what grandiose narcissists do, instead of the covert narcissist's typical upward social comparisons, which leads to envy. So hopefully what I'm getting at here is, if you understand this model, the reason why covert narcissistic individuals are so vulnerable, and I use the word vulnerable, maybe I should say that they're more likely to experience Schadenfreude, and that's why they can cause difficulties for people, is because the Schadenfreude serves a psychological purpose for them. They gain psychologically from this. Now, what I want to do in the next video, which is splitting this bonus video into 2 parts, is to go through what are some telltale signs that an individual may, and of course this is may secretly revel, may secretly delight in the misfortune of others. So I'm going to go through, maybe 5 signs. I'm still sort of categorizing these, but around 5 signs that an individual is prone to experience Schadenfreude. And of course, with Schadenfreude, technically, it's the individual who is experiencing it hasn't themselves engineered the misfortune. So this is when they've become aware of it as a passive observer, okay, that something is going wrong in someone else's life, and they experience the joy. But what I'm going to do in next week's video is look at what are 5 telltale signs that someone secretly enjoys the misfortune of others. And from those 5 signs, I'll talk about what are some practical strategies to keep at bay potentially covertly aggressive and narcissistic individuals in your life, and to begin to protect yourself against this highly insidious and hidden aspect of the internal mental life of the covert narcissist, which is their envy and their Schadenfreude. So my hope in these videos is to shed light on this very difficult dynamic that is dark, that is hidden, that needs to be discussed in an academic, in a systematic way without emotion. And by doing that, we can begin to truly assist people out there who are watching these videos to gain insights and to gain tools to protect themselves, rather than just go on rants and becoming hyper emotional, and we're not really serving ourselves or the people we wish to serve. So stay tuned for next week for the 2nd installment, because for this video I just wanted to break down the core concept of Schadenfreude. And I would be interested in the comment section if you could comment on, in your native language, what is the term for Schadenfreude, and perhaps just put it in as a transliteration so we can sort of get a sense of what it sounds like and how it's pronounced. So again, in Arabic it's the word shamata, which I guess transliterated would be Shamata. So let us know what it is in your language, because we have an international audience here. Let's get a conversation started, and next week, I promise, God willing, will be a much more practical video to give you some practical tips to arm yourself with some insights, knowledge, and strategies for how to keep covertly aggressive and narcissistic individuals at bay in your life, and how not to unnecessarily expose yourself to their envy and their schadenfreude. Until then, take care, and I look forward to seeing you soon. God willing, bye-bye.